Greetings and salutations. It is I, Mr. Nothing, the museum curator of the weird and the strange and the host who might be a ghost. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all manner of unusual literature that I have found in my travels. Today, I wanted to talk about a specific book that I have read. It's a book about royalty, learning that you are royalty specifically, and either wish fulfillment or wish deferment. I will talk more about that later, but the book that I'm referring to is The Princess Diaries by Meg Cabot, which you might recognize as the name of a movie, which was directed in 2001. So I'll talk a little bit more about the movie as well, as well as provide a summary of the book and go into a little bit of analysis of what I learned and what I saw when I read it. For those that don't know who Meg Cabot is, she's not a very prolific writer. She's mainly spent her time writing the Princess Diaries series and then Avalon High, which was also adapted by Disney. I think it was adapted into a Disney Channel original movie, so not made into a theatrical release like the Princess Diary movies. So Meg Cabot is she's donated to a lot of charities, but she hasn't really made a name beyond the Princess Diaries series, I think is what I'm trying to say there. So without further ado, let me summarize the book for you. The Princess Diaries is about Mia Thermopolis. She is a 14-year-old girl. She's a freshman in high school, so that'd be about her age, living in Manhattan with her artist mom. Her mom and dad are separated. Philippe lives in Europe with his many girlfriends, and her mom is just an artist, and her dad pays for the stuff that they need. Mia has her mom and her dad and Fat Louie, who is a giant cat that Mia adores. And she also has Lily, who is her best friend. Lily can be best described as a sort of socialist feminist activist, a social justice warrior back in 2000. So she rejects the patriarchy, rejects animal cruelty, all kinds of things, and she's one of the more outspoken students at her school. And Mia's alongside her. Mia's a vegetarian. She doesn't eat meat. She rejects the patriarchy, something she learned from her mother as well. And she's outspoken, but she's a little more shy than Lily is. And Lily frequently calls her out on that by saying she's not very assertive, and she needs to stand her ground more. So the story really kickstarts when her dad, Felipe, comes over from Europe. And he reveals to Mia that he is a prince of Genovia. He is the sort of heir to the throne after Mia's grandmother dies. Unfortunately, this means that he's expected to produce heirs, which is difficult given that he's just recovered from testicular cancer, and that cancer has made him infertile. He's no longer capable of producing offspring. So, in a bit of a hilarious moment, Mia doesn't get it. He has to explain to her, "You're my only offspring. This means that you are heir to the throne. You are Princess Amelia something something." It's a very long title that I don't really care to learn. Which she's kind of shocked by, and she immediately rejects. Because she's kind of like very self-conscious and has low self-confidence. She doesn't really see herself as a princess. She's not very popular. She's hyper-focused on her boobs, and I guess her appearance in general. I don't know if that is something that Meg Cabot just wrote in there for no apparent reason, or that's something that young women actively think about. As if you're a young woman, or if you were a young woman once and you still remember that time, is that something that that young women still frequently dwell upon, about having boobs or not, because, I wouldn't think that, because Mia thinks about it an awful lot. So yeah, sound off in the comments below. So as I mentioned, Mia rejects the idea. She does not want to be princess because she feels she doesn't meet the requirements, meet the picture of what a princess is, and she thinks it'll totally ruin her life because her dad wants her to move to Genovia. And so she's like, no thanks, I'd rather stay in Manhattan and be with my friends. Ultimately, a compromise is struck where Mia will take lessons from her grandmother, who will arrive in America, and in exchange for one day assuming the throne, her father will donate to a charity of her choice. And Mia accepts that begrudgingly, but she does acknowledge that she's willing to at least play this part for now. Eventually, her grandmother comes over from Europe and gives her a makeover and teaches her all sorts of different lessons about how to become a princess. Her grandmother's kind of a dick. There's no other way to say it. Her grandmother is a very harsh, very mean kind of person. I was expecting Julie Andrews, a Julie Andrews vibe from the movie, but this character, Grandmère, as she's called, she is very harsh, and she's pretty much ruined Philippe, her son, and Mia's dad, because he doesn't know how to stand up to her, and nobody really stands up to her. She does some pretty terrible things throughout the book that she's never held to account for, and so she kind of just bullies Mia a lot. And so, she gives Mia a makeover, and this kind of estranges her from Lily, because Lily's like, why don't you stand up to yourself? You're always so weak and downtrodden, and you don't assert yourself, and that's why your grandmother is willing to walk all over you. And at that point, Mia does assert herself. She's like, you talk down to me, Lily. You always treat me like garbage. And so that creates a rift between the two of them throughout the rest of the book, which lasts far longer than it does in the movie. Anyways, Mia ends up befriending another girl at her school, Tina Hakim Baba, if I'm pronouncing that right. Her parents are Saudi oil rig owners, and so she also comes from a place of a lot of money. So I think, but Tina's also kind of shy about that and doesn't want to really express that, and has become a bit of an outcast because she always walks around with a bodyguard, and she's known as being that super rich girl who goes to the school. And so I think Mia, they kind of bond over that without Mia actually telling her that she's royal. Shortly after this, the press find out that Mia is a princess, and they begin hounding her and surrounding her. And the kids at school all find out, and they stare at her again like she's a freak, like they do with Tina. Tina still wants to be her friend, but Lily confronts her and is like, "Oh, the monarchy is an outdated establishment." And they have a whole rant about that, about how the monarchy is oppressive towards women and the people that it exploits labor and all kinds of things like that. But Lily's brother, who Mia is becoming friends with, he's like, Genovia is different. They don't collect taxes on their people, and they're actually a very progressive country, which for some reason Meg Cabot loves to. She absolutely loves to defend the monarchy here, which she's sending mixed messages by incorporating a lot of socialist ideas, and then totally disregarding that by going out of her way to defend the monarchy. But that's an issue I have with the story that I'll talk about later. This newfound fame that Mia has does earn her some points with the popular kids. There is a girl named Lana who has kind of been a bully to Mia for the longest time. She ends up trying to be friends with Mia, but Mia pushes her out of the way. Lana's boyfriend, Josh, ends up breaking up with Lana and asks Mia out to a dance that's coming up. And Mia is just so much in love with this guy. She's been thinking about him since the start of the book, and even before that. She's like, okay, yeah, I'll go with Josh. it'll give us a chance to know each other, and we can bond over that and become soulmates. The day of the dance comes, and they have a before party at a restaurant, and Josh ends up drinking. He has a fake ID, and nobody seems to like question his ID, especially because everybody looks severely underage. Mia ends up not drinking because she doesn't like to put toxins in her body, which makes her boring, so she is slowly over the course of this night becoming disillusioned with her love of Josh. And when they show up to the high school or to have their dance, Josh makes a big show in front of the reporters that are there, and he ends up kissing Mia in front of all of them. And she's kind of really disgusted by that. She realizes he was only using her to because of her status. It made him look good, and it gained him some fame by kissing a princess. And Mia ends up acknowledging that at the dance. She's like, you only kissed me in order to gain favor with those reporters. You have been using me this whole time. I thought I liked you, and I thought you liked me, but that's not true. And she stands up for herself in one of those rare moments where she actually decides to be assertive, and she tells Josh off, and he goes away. And then she makes up with Lily and Tina, and she has some fun at the dance, and she even dances with Michael, Lily's brother, and he they end up striking up a small romance that's blooming at this point. It's not anywhere specific, and the book ends there with Mia very optimistic about her future, although her position on whether or not she's going to be a princess is still very much up in the air. Does she want it? Does she not want it? And nothing seems to have been resolved there. And that's pretty much the end of the story right there. In terms of analysis, what did I like? What did I not like? I love the humor that was used in this story. Meg Cabot is really good at highlighting the funny parts of a situation. Really good at writing humor into a story, which is what you don't see very often with a lot of writers. Some writers are good at incorporating humor, and others are very cringy about it. I read Artemis Fowl just last week, and there are definitely some parts where it comes off very cringy with the humor, but I believe Meg Cabot is very natural, and it really helps make this story flourish. For example, there's a part where Lily's brother Michael acknowledges the root of all capitalist evil as Ronald McDonald, and I giggled when I read that because I thought it was very funny. And also, just reading Mia's reaction to finding out that she's a princess and describing all the reasons why she doesn't want to be. One of them is that her hair is in the shape of a triangle, so that it kind of resembles a yield sign. And I just couldn't stop laughing about that. I also think that she's really good at broaching the themes of socialism and feminism. I feel that's especially important because, one, you're talking about the monarchy, and that's a topic that you kind of need to address as being kind of oppressive towards the less fortunate. Although mean, it's very. I feel like it's a very weak there because she does try to talk about socialism, but again, she also goes to great means to try to defend the monarchy and make it seem like, oh, Genovia is a paradise. Nobody pays taxes there. Everybody is happy, and I can't help but feel like she created this place where she has to justify its very existence repeatedly, and this series goes on for several more books. I wonder how often she's going to try to justify this story's existence, or this country's existence. And then there's the whole idea of feminism, where she touches upon it several times. And when I first started catching on to it, I thought, oh well, maybe Meg Cabot's going to highlight how this ultimately has to be Mia's choice. She can't have the princess-ship decided for her. She has to want to be a princess. And I thought, well, that's going to be a pretty cool thing when it happens. But Meg Cabot constantly approaches it, but she never lands. She never sticks the landing. I feel like Meg Cabot had the intention of doing that, but she struggled. It's one of the it hurts the book so much because by the end of the story, it seems like Mia doesn't really have any autonomy of her own. As much as she wants this princess ship to be her decision, by the end of the book, that's left unresolved. There's no answer as to whether or not she's going to be the princess, how she feels about the princess. She's merely optimistic about the future. And yes, she did stand up to herself, to Josh, and I think that's absolutely wonderful. But I think she dropped the ball a little bit. Maybe she didn't. Maybe I'm just complaining and she didn't go far enough when she went plenty far. If you think differently, again, please comment below. I'd be glad to hear from you. One of the reasons this is kind of infuriating is because of who the target audience of this book is. Teenage girls. And like Meg Cabot could have written a book that addressed how men see women and how women are expected to behave like princesses, and she could have rejected that and said that it's okay for women to be who they are and to strive to be the person that they want to be. And Meg Cabot doesn't do a very good job of that. And maybe I'm just expecting the book to be one thing and it's another. Lastly, I will say that I didn't really like the characters involved in this. Specifically Mia at times. Like, she's funny, she's interesting, and one of the most interesting things about her is that she doesn't want to be a princess, and by the end of the book that's kind of like forgotten about in a lot of ways. And so it seems like Meg Cabot is robbing Mia of one of her few interesting characteristics. Lily's being made to look like a fool, like a social justice-y fool. Mia's dad is kind of a jerk. Mia's grandma is a manipulative sociopath in a lot of ways. Mia's mom is pretty cool, but many of the characters are just kind of either boring or terrible, and I can't really relate to any of them. Like, even back in my teenage years, teenage Mr. Nothing probably would have enjoyed this book, but I still probably would have found these characters to be slightly annoying. Like, Mia spends the entire book complaining, and she sticks up for herself a few times, but that's few and far between. So that I feel like that definitely hurt the book as much as the whole feminism, social justice-y thing falling on its face. So I want to talk a little bit about the movie. I was actually surprised to find that this was entirely different from the movie. For one thing, the grandmother character is unlikable, and in the movie she's played by Julie Andrews, and she's actually a really central piece for Mia to coalesce around, to really find herself. Lily and Mia's argument in the movie doesn't last nearly as long. Lily's more likable in the movie, but she's still very social justice-y oriented. Mia complains a lot less in the movie, and it also takes place in San Francisco for some reason, which didn't make sense entirely. And I guess they had to change a few things to make it workable into a movie. It is interesting that they changed so much about the book. Maybe it says how bad the book is. Maybe it just says that they needed to change a lot. But in that regard, I would definitely recommend that you check out the movie before you check out the book. And maybe not even check out the book, because it kind of falls flat on the face. With that said, there are 9 other books in the series, and they take place over the course of the rest of her high school career, which I can't believe that. 4 years of high school over the course of 10 books. I'm absolutely going to read these books, because I have to know if anything gets resolved. Does she end up a princess? Does she end up happy? And who does she end up with? I want to know what her story is, even though the first book started off so bad. I can only hope it gets better from here, but the fact that they haven't adapted any of the books afterwards kind of says a lot. And with that, I believe that I'm done talking about this book. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you want to if you want to see more about the Princess Diaries. And don't forget to leave a comment with your thoughts on this review and this book if you've read it before. I hope you have a pleasant time in your weird travels, and farewell.